Welcome back to the Liability Lounge After Hours. As always, I'm Bryan, Lindsay. With me today is Joe Leoni and our special guest, Colleen Kosluchar. And it's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. In the spirit of Valentine's Day, or if you're sick of buying Valentine's cards or don't want to continue to give those gifts, or if your spouse is getting too expensive, we're going to talk about family law today. Colleen is our resident family law practitioner, one of our experts at the Trenti Law Firm. And why don't you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. So I do family law, I do probate, I do estate planning, and I'm going to talk a little bit about all three today. And I'm really going to focus today on gray divorce, whatever that means. And it's not just because I need a new color, which I do, but this is kind of a new phenomenon that's going on in the world these days, in the United States particularly. There's a higher percentage of couples over 50 getting divorced, and it brings out some interesting issues. Think Bill and Melinda Gates, Hugh Jackman and his wife, Deborah, whatever, Lee Furness, I think is her name. Rhea Perlman, I can't talk, and Danny DeVito, long-term marriages.
Danny DeVito got divorced?
He did. He and Rhea, who was on Cheers.
I heard it was a short wedding or short marriage. It's too soon.
It was a long marriage, but they're short people, yes. Okay. Anyway, so just for statistics, because I like statistics, in 1990, only 8.7% of marriages of persons over age 50 ended in divorce. And in 2019, pre-COVID, so I think the number's higher, 36% of marriages over age 50 ended in divorce.
Is there a reason?
Yes. Yes. What reasons do you think they are, Joe?
The sanctity of marriage. You were forced, whatever religion you were, you don't get a divorce.
Right.
That's probably one of them.
Mm-hmm. Generational changes in attitudes. Yeah. What do you think, Lindsay?
I'll take the road I always take. I blame lawyers.
Lawyers? Certainly part of it. Greater longevity is another one. People not willing to put up with things they were putting up with for many years. That kind of feeds into the empty nest syndrome. So you raise the kids, you spend all this time building your wealth, and now you're looking at each other and you don't know who you are. So that's another reason.
Building wealth. What happens in a divorce?
But then we separate the wealth and everybody's broke. So you're losing that. But hopefully you're gaining something in the process, right? The other thing is a lot of remarriages aren't as successful. So if you're older and you're in your second or third or fourth or fifth marriage, you might end up divorced in your 50s on. Infidelity is still one. Thank you, Viagra. I don't know. Health problems. I've had a couple of these where the couple cared about each other, but one person got very, very sick. They had limited assets. And one spouse, who's the well spouse, is faced with losing their entire retirement to pay for nursing home costs, and they get divorced.
Is that legal?
It is.
Oh.
It's a no-fault state. You can get divorced. And then many times they still take care of each other, but they just have to follow through the divorce process. Now, if that other person has limited capacity because of dementia or some other problem, the court has to appoint a guardian ad litem to represent them in the divorce. So that gets a little interesting. So that has happened. Just those are kind of and then the general reasons anybody gets divorced, right? You just can't stand the way they chew their food or slurp their coffee, whatever. I don't know. People do all kinds of things, right? In gray divorce, though, there's greater risks. As you can imagine, Joe kind of alluded to one, right? You're getting close to retirement, you've built wealth, and now you're going to cut it in half. That gets tricky. Healthcare costs. If your spouse has great health insurance and you're going to lose it, that's a problem. You've got 2 houses, legal expenses. And then I think it's a little bit harder for some folks to rebuild their life. You've had this life with somebody 30 years or more, and you've have friends together, you have family connections. It's a lot to sever. So for some people, it's not so good. Now, for other people, it's great. They go on and they find their new people. So, so gray divorce. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, I know for a lot of listeners, probably they understand some of the concepts in divorce. Some people have been divorced, right? One of the main ones we start off with in a divorce, in a gray divorce, presumably, unless you're an octogenarian with small children, you're not dealing with custody, right? Most likely not. But you're dealing with assets and debt, right? And so you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what's getting divvied up here? many of my clients come to me and say, oh, well, that motorcycle is titled just in my name, so it's mine. Well, that's not how it works. That pension you worked 40 years for, the part of it that was earned in the marriage, guess what? It gets split. You know, there's usually no way around that unless you have other assets to give that person. Go ahead, Lindsay.
So I was just going to kind of ask a question because I don't practice in family law. And so if my wife were to come to her senses, how long would I have before we had to sell that motorcycle if she would let me get one in the first place? And what I'm really asking is maybe you could just give us a broad overview of kind of what the process of a
divorce
a normal divorce looks like.
Sure. So in Minnesota, the courts in recent years have really moved toward pushing the parties to mediation first. So in Minnesota, say you file for divorce, your spouse gets served, they have 30 days to answer, file a counter petition. The court's first hearing is going to be what they call an ICMC hearing, and it's basically to determine whether you're willing to go into a mediation process. You can't automatically before then file any kind of motion saying, I want that motorcycle, or I want to keep it, or I want to sell it. The minute you file that divorce complaint, or that divorce petition, they call them actually, there's a standing order that says you can't get rid of anything except for necessities or attorney's fees. You can't start selling that motorcycle and going to Mexico with your new girlfriend. So you're kind of stuck. So you got to keep it, got to manage it. You got to
Not my new girlfriend. If my wife is watching,
you can go to Mexico with your new girlfriend, but you just can't take the motorcycle.
You can't take you can't take marital assets. If you got a pot of money from grandma over there, then grandma writes you a check to go, you're good. You can live your natural life, but if you have limited assets and you take it all and go to Mexico, there could be a question about whether you wasted assets in the course of the divorce. Which kind of brings me to a question about dissipation. That and when does it start? So the courts will look at if the minute you tell your spouse you want a divorce and say you don't file right away, you're kind of working things out. But say your spouse falls in love with Jennifer Aniston and starts selling, giving her mass quantities from your bank accounts or cashing out the IRA. That could be a problem for that person when you finally get in front of a judge.
Well.
Yeah. So, by the way, Jennifer Aniston has a boyfriend. So don't go there.
I was going to say, the question may not be whether you fall in love with Jennifer, it's whether she reciprocates.
Well, yeah, online there's a lot of catfishing situations and false bots, and people are getting caught up in that, especially the gray people, because they don't really know what they're looking at, and they really seem to think that if Jennifer Aniston messages you somehow in some sort of internet forum, that you're really in love and it's real. So don't do that. Call a lawyer. Give your money to the lawyer instead. So yeah. So then people also look at non-marital property. That's the other thing. So you inherit the family cabin from your mom. What happens then, right? Well, it's going to depend on some factors. If you put your spouse on title, if your spouse made improvements to the cabin, if you mortgaged the cabin to do a big fancy house on it, that non-marital separate property, which normally wouldn't get divided, could be divided, or part of it could be divided. So that's one thing you have to watch out for as well.
Well, what happens in the gray divorce? You called it the gray divorce.
Gray divorce, yeah.
Okay, so you got the cabin when you were 25, and now it's 25 years later,
right,
or longer.
Right.
Is it worthwhile try to go back and divide it, or is it just forget it?
So in your scenario, did you put your spouse on title? Did your spouse make improvements, or you just kept it over there and didn't?
No, you ran it as a family.
You ran it as a family, yeah. And that spouse you might have some protection. It's going to be a tracing thing. What was that cabin worth the date you got it? How much did you put into it? How much did your spouse contribute? There'll be some kind of a question around that. So a portion of it might be non-marital still. Some of it might be marital at that point. If you just have a pot of money, money's a little bit easier. You got a pot of money from grandma, you left it in a bank account, and it accumulated passive appreciation like interest at a bank. Well, that's probably still yours. That's non-marital, right? But if your spouse is involved, you're investing it and you're getting, active appreciation or moving things around in the market, and the spouse is involved in that, well, that active appreciation most likely is going to be marital. So even though that chunk of money that you got, the initial chunk might still be yours, the active appreciation is going to be marital. So that'll get divided. So yeah.
What about the hunting shack where it's grandpa gives it to the 5 boys and the 5 boys marry and now one of the boys is getting divorced. What happens there?
So if they're all 5 untitled, the 1/5 interest, right, it would be possibly on the table. But again, if they kept it kind of separate and had a separate account, and really the spouse didn't get too involved, didn't go hunting, didn't help make improvements, you might be okay on that. It's kind of a gray zone. The court will look at a lot of different factors and see what's fair and appropriate under the circumstances.
Could you plan for that? Could you, say, build a transfer restriction on a LLC ownership
Yeah,
situation?
certainly some of the things to do would actually just to be put it in an LLC, because then the LLC members are the owners, or even a trust. Some people do that. And if that spouse isn't involved in that process, and as some LLCs specifically say, this will never, a spouse of a member will never have ownership, well, then I think it's pretty protected. Yeah, so those are good things to think about. So
Colleen's going to send us a bill after this.
Exactly.
So then the question becomes, okay, so we've got marital assets, non-marital assets, and then the court's going to say, okay, we're going to do a just and equal division without regard to marital misconduct. Well, what does that mean? You guys know what marital misconduct means?
Oh, I've got some ideas. Is that when I leave the dishes out and...
Yeah, maybe if she wants to use that against you. More often than not, it's like, infidelity, that kind of thing. So if you're kind of a bad spouse, guess what? It's still going to be a 50-50 split. Doesn't matter. We have no fault divorce here in Minnesota. So the court will look, kind of generally at a bunch of factors. I won't list them all, but basically, the length of the marriage and everybody's health status and all of that. But again, just remember, the contributions aren't the things that they trace. They're really looking at what's on the table that you guys acquired during the marriage together. You might have been the homemaker. You might have been the person raising the kids, but you have an equal right to all those assets. The only difference would be, okay, I just want to back up on this. So then they get into these big fights about what's on the table, right? And the biggest fights that we see that are strange are not the high value items. I was a law clerk up in Alaska, and a judge I was working for actually, again, I'm going to date myself here. This couple was fighting over the Avon bottle collection. Do you remember Avon, those perfumes and things that came in little collectibles that people sold? They had 2 lawyers. The judge they put in 4 tables. The judge made them bring all the collection in, and they took turns taking the things. After 3 hours, the judge totaled up what the legal fees were, and they said, I hope that collection was worth it. I know of other people where the judge conducted an auction because they couldn't agree. This one spouse wanted the grill to go to the wife, but he wanted the grill cover. He wanted a wooden key ring. Somebody wanted an ashtray from Las Vegas, and the judge they were fighting over so much personal property. The judge made them come in, and then it went to the highest bidder. They were bidding for their items.
Are judges given a pretty good amount of discretion in fashioning those sorts of things?
They are, and they get very frustrated on the personal property, the tangible personal property. Don't fight about that. It's never worth it financially. And secondly, the judge gets really ticked off, and they'll make you do dumb things like bring it in and auction it, and it'll cost you a lot of attorney's fees. So you could just go out and buy new stuff, really, honestly. The one other thing I want to point out, we talked about marital, non-marital. Well, you do have a case, and this comes up in gray divorce actually a fair amount. If one spouse doesn't have enough marital assets, say there's very little marital assets, and one spouse came in with a bunch of money, a bunch of investment accounts, bank accounts, and they're both retirement age, right? And that one spouse has protected it, didn't put the spouse on it, utilized the funds appropriately. That second spouse can invade that non-marital property because they're destitute. They have nothing. They have no retirement. They have no nothing. And that can happen too. And that can be pretty tricky because you're both retired at that age maybe, and you've got a fixed income. You've got your pension if you have anything, your Social Security. And in that case, my poor client, although he had done a really good job of protecting his assets, sometimes you have to give it up because the other side has nothing. So
Would a prenup?
a prenup would help that. You can definitely do that. And that's something to be recommended, particularly if you're at later years and it's a second marriage and you've got kids from a prior. You definitely want to be looking at a prenup and a trust, probably.
Is that solid, or can a prenup be invaded?
Oh, family law is always squishy. You know that, Jill. Judges have lots of discretion. No, you have to follow I won't go through them, and the law just recently changed, but you want to go through very specific routines to make the prenup enforceable. in that, so you have to go through procedural steps. It also has to be substantially fair. And that's the point at which the judge can invade the prenup and say, and at the point you're doing a prenup, you're actually disclosing what assets you each have. And if there's a huge imbalance, or if there's an imbalance at the time of the divorce, the court can go, yeah, well, we're going to go into some of these things here that you wanted to protect. So they're not foolproof. They do work. They can be enforced. One of the huge things, apart from following the timelines and doing it appropriately, is you really want to encourage the spouse whose attorney is not drafting the prenup to have an attorney review it with them, and make sure that they understand English or it's explained to them in their language. I've had a few mail order brides come over, and we've got folks who want to have a prenup, but then the spouse doesn't speak English. I've helped them find attorneys who speak their language so that they can have it explained to them, because that's going to be an easy way to say, well, I only understand Mandarin, so I didn't understand any of this, or I only understand Spanish, and so that's it. So you got to be careful with them, but they do work. They're not 100% foolproof, but they're a good tool to use. And like I said, particularly in second marriage, third marriages on down, where you've got kids from a prior and you're trying to protect your estate, leave something for your kids, because this gets into estate planning, right? If you have no estate plan, you have a bunch of assets, you get married a second time, you've got kids from the prior marriage, and you die first. Your spouse may get a large share of them, more than you want that second spouse to get, and your kids may be out in the cold. So, and that's the classic probate litigation scenario, let me tell you. The second, third, fourth marriage and kids from the prior, they're fighting the surviving spouse. So, yeah.
So in these cases, and it's not just self-serving, but these are the reasons why it's highly recommended to consult with attorneys when you're doing something like a prenuptial or antenuptial agreement.
Right.
Because reading those words about fundamental fairness and disclosure, reading them is one thing, but actually knowing how to apply those and to make sure you get the proper interpreters or whomever you need, and make sure the other side has every opportunity to be represented. Following through those things is not something that Google is very good at telling us or explaining.
Right. And there's new timelines now as to when it needs to be signed. It used to be just any time before the marriage, but now I believe it's 7 days, and you have to get it signed before then. And if you don't, it's not worth the paper it's on. I mean, it's useless. You've basically given them a tool to overturn it. Spousal maintenance, let's talk about that. That's a favorite one that people love, especially if they have to pay it. That used to be called alimony. There's new rules around that. The Supreme Court, or the legislature and the Supreme Court, have really tried to kind of clean up that area. It's become pretty straightforward now. If you're married less than 5 years, they call it a rebuttable presumption, which essentially means this is going to be the way it goes unless you prove something unique or something special around your situation. So less than 5 years, no maintenance. Now, the exception might be, say you're a disabled person, you have no ability to earn income, maybe you'd still get maintenance depending on that. But the less than 5 years, nothing. 5 years to less than 20 years, they can give you transitional maintenance. It used to be called rehabilitative maintenance, and that would be a period of maintenance to get you on the feet. Say you've got a person who was in the home more with children, taking care of them, and you've got the spouse who was in the workforce, right? And the one that was home didn't finish their education. We'll give them some time to finish an education, be able to earn a good living. It cannot be any longer than 1/2 the length of the marriage, though, rebuttably. So they're putting some more firm timelines on it. And then indefinite maintenance is 20 years or more. So if you're in a long marriage and a gray divorce, you might have a problem. Now, if both sides earn the same amount, or both sides have no money at all, and the other side doesn't have the ability to pay, you might not be paying maintenance. Or very often clients are more interested in saying, and particularly in a gray divorce, if you're the one wanting maintenance, you might not want to have maintenance because that guy could keel over any day and your maintenance is done unless you have an insurance policy.
Not me
Not you.
personally.
Not you.
I mean, I could.
He's filling in for the...
Depends on how much I shoot my mouth off during this episode, I suppose.
But basically, so the maintenance might not be a great thing, and maybe you look, if you have enough property, you take a little more of the property and say, I'll just go invest this pot of money because I don't trust you're going to be alive, right? You know, or you for sure get an insurance policy that's going to cover you, so you're going to get your full maintenance award. So that's maintenance. I don't know. Not a fun topic. Oh, and the other sad thing is you used to be able to, when you were the payer of maintenance, get a federal deduction for those payments, and now they took that away too. So it just kind of sucks to pay maintenance.
So you can't write it off in your taxes anymore?
No, not since 2018.
What about child support? Can you write that off?
No, you never can write child support off. No, maintenance you used to be able to, but that was kind of at least one way to get clients to say, "Hey, it's not so bad."
The likes people go for a tax deduction.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, then I kind of wrapping up. Here's the other thing. Let's say you're in the middle of a divorce and you haven't completed the divorce. There's no decree. You're in litigation, and one spouse dies. Do you guys know what happens then to the assets?
You're not divorced.
You're not divorced.
It's on the table.
There we go.
Yep. The surviving spouse would either get what's entitled to them through a will or trust, or they would get their spousal share, which typically is, it varies per asset, but typically they get the first $225,000 of asset plus half if there's prior kids from a prior marriage, or if all the kids are of the marriage, the spouse is getting everything. And they hit the jackpot. They didn't have to get divorced then. They got everything.
The ultimate divorce, I
The
guess.
ultimate, yeah. That's a divorce with advantages, right? That's a Valentine's Day divorce.
A divorce with benefits.
Yeah, I was going to say that, and then I thought I better not.
I'll say it.
Okay,
Is there certain times of the year where there's more divorces?
I think when people have more money, holidays kind of are rough. After the holidays, people are tired of each other. That's common. We're getting a lot of calls right now. When the tax refunds come in, right? COVID, when nobody had any money, when people weren't working, people stayed together. They did not get divorced. And then there was a big surge after. I think in the fall, when kids go back to school, is another big time for divorces to get started. But people can...
After graduation?
Yeah, might be. Some.
Because I know, doing a little bit of criminal law, in my practice, I see domestics go up a lot during the
Right.
holiday season.
Yes.
So
Well, and I don't know if it's true here, but I know there was a big surge in Alaska. I lived in Alaska 11 years, and so people were pretty much catatonic through the winter, and they didn't do anything. And then once this light came back, we'd have about 20 hours of light in April, and the snow started melting, but it wasn't gone. People got really anxious then. And so that's when all the murders, the crimes, the divorces, all kinds of things happened then. People got some energy back with the light.
hard to do that stuff in the dark.
It is, yeah. And when you're so tired and you have 2 hours of daylight, you don't feel like doing anything. So,
It's vitamin D.
yeah, it is.
Now, are there written rules for pets?
Pets are property. That's a big one.
Okay.
That's a big one. People will fight over the pets. So, and sometimes people share custody of pets. I've seen that in divorces. So yeah, and especially it's an expensive pet, if it's a purebred that you spent a lot of money on and trained it. But I have seen them go back and forth to almost a custody agreement, which is kind of crazy. Really? But if people want to agree to that, they can.
Do they commit it to the decrees and the agreements?
Oh yeah, they can.
What-
It's not enforceable if you don't. So.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever seen somebody fight over?
The Avon bottles was one. Let me think. I've seen divorces get all settled and you come down to the one last thing, like a stupid kayak or something. You've gotten down to the area, you've gone through all the painful process, and we're going to fight over a stupid kayak. Or we're going to fight over whether this grandma's china was mine premarital. I mean, yeah, I've seen the personal property be the dumbest thing, people, because they've gone through all the hard stuff. They've gone through the investment accounts. They've gone through the real estate. They've made all the hard choices. And then they get down to the sentimental items, I don't trust you to make copies of the photographs.
Are they sentimental items or spite items?
Spite items too. Yeah, I read about one divorce where somebody basically their spouse was into koi fish and had a really an old koi fish that she'd nursed a long time, and he killed it and put it on the courthouse steps. And then she couldn't do the trial that day because she was so upset. I think it was in L.A.
That's terrible. It's
right.
terrible.
It is terrible.
But I thought you were going fish fry.
No. No.
That's a little dark.
No.
Since this is Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
Who started it? Hallmark or some saint?
Well, there is a Saint Valentine.
There is a
too,
Saint
right?
Valentine.
What are they known for?
Well, I think Saint Valentine, if I remember right, way back in the 13th, 14th century, was he stepped up to the plate and he would marry soldiers. For some reason,
So soldiers together or soldiers with whoever they wanted?
right? I think it was because the king wanted the enforcement, the number of people, soldiers, to be at his disposal. And with the spouse, it was, now the soldier is divided between the family and the spouse and not the king, something like that. So we can't blame Hallmark for...
Yeah, I don't remember. I feel bad. I should know who St. Valentine was, but I know Hallmark was it's Mother's Day too, is the same thing, right? It's just a commercial holiday to get people to buy stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Martyrs, here, I think we've got a little message here, Joe. Yeah, secretly marrying soldiers, defying Emperor Claudius II.
There you go.
He got executed on February 14th. Oh, wow.
You could only be married to one soldier at a time, though.
Yeah. Yes, so prenups, I had a question here, what they put in it. They can put all kinds of weird things in it. Usually, like famous celebrities, they have sometimes intimacy.
Like Sandra Bullock?
Yeah, Sandra Bullock, Jennifer Aniston. They can put intimacy, like the amount of intimacy, into the prenup. Number of kids, right? How many years you're married is common, and kids are common. Like if you have kids, you'll get a greater percentage, right? What other weird things do they put in there? I think amount of time you spend together is in celebrity ones. Like if you are taking on too many movies and we're not having enough time together, that can be a problem. So I don't know how enforceable that is if they're keeping track of each other's schedules, but that is true. So anyway, going back to the dead person, though, I love talking about dead people on Valentine's Day.
Are you waking Bryan up or what?
I'm waking him up. He got nervous again.
I did get a little bit nervous here.
I'm glad the chairs are pointed towards you.
I'm well behaved today.
But the thing is, so let's say you get divorced. You finally get through the whole process. You've paid your attorney a ton of money.
We appreciate that.
Yes, which we appreciate. You've done the thing. You've got everything lined out. What happens next? What if you die after that? I mean, Minnesota law fortunately steps in. If you had an old will that gave your spouse the right to inherit from you, you're okay. It's going to say, no, that doesn't work anymore. They got divorced.
So the divorce
revokes
the will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How about powers of attorney, healthcare directive?
Well, the interesting thing with those, and I learned this today actually when I was researching this, I thought they would be revoked at the end of the divorce, at the conclusion when you have your decree. But actually, the minute you file that divorce in court, those are revoked. Now, with the power of attorney, you need to notify your attorney, in fact, that you're revoked now, and per the statute, you're done. But that kind of makes sense because you really don't want your soon-to-be ex-spouse deciding whether you go on or off life support, right? I mean, if you're laying there in a coma. I wouldn't want them.
Depends on if you want to survive or not.
Or taking all your money again to give to Sandra Bullock or Jennifer Aniston. I mean, you don't really want that happening while you're laying in the coma waiting for the divorce. So yeah, those go into effect the minute you file the divorce. Yeah. So, but it's important nonetheless, once you are divorced, anytime you need an estate plan, but once you're divorced, it changes everything, right? So you're going to maybe be giving to charity, you're going to be giving to your children in a different way. You definitely need to come in and take care of that because that's a gift to your loved ones. It's a gift to whoever you want to inherit from you. And you certainly don't want that stinky spouse to get anything.
Ex-spouse.
Ex-spouse, yeah.
So now, before we end this, what about common law marriages? California, we here has common law.
Yeah,
is that in Minnesota?
So common law was referencing certain states, not California. California has community
law.
Spouse, yeah, and community law. That's not here. That's a Western states phenomenon. I think because of the fact that it was the West and people weren't when settlers were going there weren't people to marry them, so they were living together in sin, and they had to kind of recognize that relationship. Here we don't recognize common law marriage, and actually, I learned that when a family member in the 70s, her husband suddenly died, and everyone thought they had married, and they hadn't, and there was no common law marriage. So it was interesting. It worked out at the end of the day, but yeah. So there are now with, you can have domestic partnerships and different things like that, something other than marriage. You can do a contract regarding that if you want to do that instead of getting married, but marriage is opened up to a lot more people, so most people go for that. One other thing I would mention too about legal separations, people say, well, I don't want to get divorced because it's against my religion, but can I get a legal separation? You can do that. You can divide up assets and things. But if you know you're going to get divorced at the end of the day, it's just another procedure that'll double your attorney's fees. So unless you have some kind of moral reason or a religious reason that you don't want to be divorced, then you could do that. So.
And can you get an annulment?
You can do that too, yeah.
Is there so long you can annul a marriage, or?
I don't think there's a limitation.
Okay.
But I think proving it might get harder if you've been together 30 years and have 5 kids.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. And people do that for religious reasons too very often. So, yeah.
It's like a mulligan.
Right.
It's not maybe not the thing to say.
Yeah. So you guys know who was married the most times? The record? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
A gentleman who was married 29 times is the record.
Wow.
The last one ended at death, so I don't know how many were divorces. But...
Sounds like 28 happy divorce lawyers.
Right, exactly.
Or one really happy divorce lawyer.
Right. So hopefully you never need this, especially on Valentine's Day. You don't want to be calling our office, but if you should, that's what we're here for to help.
But after the holidays, during tax return season,
school starting.
School starting.
Yep. Or you just can't handle the way they slurp anymore. Just give us a call.
All right.
Well, we appreciate all your knowledge, Colleen. We appreciate you coming in and sharing all this with us. I learned a bunch today. I will forget it immediately once we leave here. Don't worry, honey. But as much fun as we poked at this, from all of us at the Liability Lounge After Hours, we do hope you have a happy Valentine's Day. Do take your spouse or significant other out to dinner.
To dinner.
Get her the card, get her the chocolates, take the trip.
And if you're not married, celebrate Galentine's Day the next day.
Valentine's Day.
What is that?
Parks and Rec. You guys don't watch Parks and Rec?
I thought
You guys got to learn about that.
Is it spelled Gallon?
G-A-L.
Gallon?
And then the husband, I don't know if they have an equivalent to Galentine's, but they should. Galentine's.
Festivus?
Festivus.
I don't know.
I think
It starts with
Every day, Husband's Day? I don't know.
Well, I don't know about all this.
I'm causing trouble now.
Oktoberfest.
I think the hunting season might be
I think
equivalent.
the bars are going to like that Galentine.
Yeah, yeah. You have to watch Parks
Go
and
eat,
Rec.
go eat, but tomorrow come to my local bar in Galentine.
Yeah. They have brunch, give each other gifts. It's a bunch of girlfriends. It's fun.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Thank you all for tuning in. If there's a topic you'd like to see us cover, if you've got questions for us, if you've got comments about what we've done or the episodes, please send them in, get in contact with us, pass along your comments or questions. If you like our podcast, please like us, follow us, and stay tuned for more. And we appreciate y'all tuning in. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy
Valentine's Day. Oh, my God.
Is that enough material? I kind of just shut it down at the end.
I'm so embarrassed.